Ever wanted a career in football? At the Global Institute of Sport, you can now study a master's degree in football business or football coaching and analysis right here in Australia. GIS is the largest provider of sports degrees in the UK, with campuses at Wembley and Etihad Stadium. Learn online with unique access to the iconic MCG and a big-hitting Australian industry network. Be one of the first Australians to get a football master's degree and join GIS's global network of football leaders. Apply now to start in February 2023. Learn more at gis.sport/FNR. That's gis.sport/FNR.
You're listening to the State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Here we are, another episode of State of Our Football Nation. George Pokuah along with Pokuah Frimpong, and another week of football. So many stories that we have to address. Some good news, some bad news, some real disappointment. And what have you made of the last few days, Pokuah?
It's been an interesting few days. In which aspect are we talking about?
I'm talking about the some of the results in the Liberty Women's, the A-League Women's, some of the results in the A-League Men's. There have been the opportunity to see some new arrivals at a couple of clubs. And, of course, overseas, aside from the biggest news, which has been, of course, the tragedy in Turkey, the earthquakes there that have taken an enormous toll on the people, and I dare say all the people working behind the scenes to make sure that they can retrieve as many people as possible, or survivors, or find them. What a job in the midst of really inclement conditions, winter time over there, of course. And we've watched the EPL upset after upset after upset. Have you recovered from any of the upsets?
No, I haven't recovered. I've emotionally recovered.
What, from the Everton Arsenal?
I have. That's that your Tottenham side.
Did that make your day?
Oh, it made my day. It made my week. So I was dreading going.
We should explain.
I was dreading.
Pokuah Frimpong is not only a fabulous football caller for Paramount Plus, she's not only my co-anchor, but she's a huge Arsenal fan, and I mean huge. Ghanaian by birth, arrived in Australia at how old?
2005, so I was 5 technically.
You were 5. And we've almost made you a full-on Aussie, haven't we?
Almost.
So tell me, if Ghana plays Australia, that is in the Women's World Cup coming up later this year, if it was that Ghana was playing for Australia, who are you barracking for?
Well, I'll be honest with you.
And I'm asking this only because people have asked me in the past, oh, you're barracking for Australia or Greece or Armenia. And I go, hey, guys, hey, I was born in Australia.
See, the thing is, I wasn't born in both my parents and both my...
That's why I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, so when the World Cup was happening,
yes,
my focus was on Ghana. I bought a black star. That's what was, if Ghana...
That's where your blood was going.
Yeah, and I want the Socceroos to do well. Yeah. But I relate more to the Ghana national team just because of the 2010 is such a big thing in my mind. The 2006 team for the Socceroos is the reason I love football. Yep. But the 2010 World Cup with Ghana is one of my, that run is one of my favourite sporting memories that I have. And
long may it continue to be, because it was exceptional. So many wonderful things have occurred. And at the end of the day, these are the memories that make us and allow us to be the fans that we turn out to be. You think about it. And I notice you very conveniently slid past providing me an answer. In the event that Ghana plays the Matildas tomorrow, who are you barracking for?
I am...
Play this well.
I would... If the Matildas won, I would not be upset.
Oh, wow. That's a good call. You'd be...
I wouldn't be upset, and I would be...
Take it on the chin.
I'll take it on the chin, but... If the Ghana Black Stars won with the lack of superstars we have globally, I would be very, very happy.
Would you be levitating across the ground?
I would, but you know what?
Wouldn't need a lift.
No, but my thing is, I just want Australian football to do well, and I love the Matildas group, and I want those players to do well, and I want us to play the best brand of football that represents Australia.
Why do I know, and why did I know you would respond to the question that way? Because that's what you do when you're calling for Paramount Plus. You're always trying to call the best game. You're always trying to make sure that you're going to see an exciting contest and that the audience is engaged in the call, and long may that continue. We've got so many things that we need to address, and one of them is, what did you make of the conversation and the application that was put out by Football Australia to all the clubs in the lower division saying, hey, there's room for a second division, and we'd like to know who's going to put their hand up to apply? What did you make of that? I
love it. I think it's been a long time coming. I think a lot of football fans have been waiting for the national second division, just want it to be done right.
What's it going to mean to all the state leagues?
I don't know, and I think that we have an interesting guest who's going to be able to potentially answer.
We're going to have a tremendous guest because our special guest on State of Our Football Nation today is someone I first met as the CEO of the Western Sydney Wanderers. His name is John Tsatsimas, and these days, after stepping away from the A-League, he's the boss man, the CEO of Football New South Wales. Is that right, John?
Good afternoon, George.
How are you? Pokuah.
Mate, I love your use of the use of the word levitate. I'll be using that after this call.
Look, there are people. You know full well, John. Your previous club did something quite extraordinary. They won the Asian Cup, and no other Australian team has got anywhere near looking like being a contender, except for Adelaide. Pardon me. Adelaide Reds got pretty close and just missed the boat. But the Western Sydney Wanderers created history when they won the competition. Those memories allowed many fans to levitate for quite some time and become locked in Western Sydney fans forever and a day. Did they not? Did that win not do that? Galvanise that support?
It did. It certainly made us an international name, and people now, when you go overseas at times, when I did it at the very least, where you're from, you're Sydney, Western Sydney Wanderers, on many occasions. It's funny, George, ironically, I watched Al Hilal yesterday, and they played Flamengo, right? And yes. Flamengo had jerseys on. Pretty much the same jersey.
Correct.
Black and white, and playing Al Hilal. It's kind of ironic that we're talking about this when those two teams involved, and a lot of memories and a lot of experiences come to the fore, especially with those lasers in the players' eyes at the time.
Look, those memories are what allow us to make the football connection so very special. Pokuah, as I touched on, is a huge Arsenal fan, but she also loves the game, and I notice each and every week her inquisition, her focus, and her drive is always to sell a better game, and that is to call a better game, and the energy that she expends when she makes an error. And I've said to her, just let it go. Don't beat yourself up. It's like making a mistake on the pitch. Yeah. If you do that, your game will suffer. Understand that everyone makes mistakes, and work to make sure that next time that you don't. You move on. Isn't that something that as a CEO you understand from every layer of any club?
Well, I take your point, but to refer to Pokuah's experience as an Arsenal supporter, that's her first mistake. And the second mistake, and quite ironic, she's wearing a Spurs top. I'm a bit confused, guys.
This is
San Antonio. It's the round ball, the other round ball.
I take the point, but I took advantage of the situation.
Look, John, in fairness, you did pick up on something very smart there. I did mention there were a couple of upsets over the last few days, and Pokuah is still levitating after watching Spurs overcome the dragon, and that is Manchester City.
Do you know what it is?
And allow her Arsenal team to remain 5 points ahead in the EPL. That's why she's got that
I'm very happy,
Spurs connection.
It's only February.
No, you know what it is? It's Harry Kane, one of our own. He slotted in the back of the net. He knew he wanted to see the glory days for Arsenal again.
Sorry. Is that Harry Kane that wanted to go to Man City 2 years ago? That's fine.
That's right. That's right. Tell me something. In this unique week, and it's in this unique year that's unfolding on us, in a year when Australia and New Zealand will be right at the forefront of football and right in the forefront of the world's attention, are you getting excited? I know you're Football New South Wales, but you're so much more. You've been part of the game. You understand what's involved and the stakes, how high they are. Are you getting genuinely excited about what's to come?
Look, Georgia, I think whichever hat we're wearing, we're all football, right? So it just happens to be we're incumbent in terms of the role we're at.
Yep.
But I was down in Albury, Wodonga on Tuesday, and the passion for the game, doesn't matter where it is and what state, is very, very parochial, very, very proud. And the women's game has gone to another level. We will see that solidify with the World Cup. It's exciting times, not only for the top end and the professionals, the semi-professionals, but also the aspirational females and males. But look at let's be quite honest, it's an opportunity now and a time for women's football to shine at the upper echelon. And those vibes, those ripple effects are being felt throughout the grades, and we're very proud of it to see that. And it's been a long time coming for female football, and football being prominent in the sporting landscape is what we're all about.
Can't argue with any of that, and it's so important to understand not only the stakes, but how we've all got to put our hand up and participate. I don't want people sitting on their hands and saying to me, "Oh yeah, I support the game." If you're going to support the game, get behind it, get right behind it, and make each and every game that's coming up super special. Because what it'll do is it'll force governments, state governments and federal governments across the country to address the shortcomings of the last 30, 40, 50 years.
We can't be ignored, George, as a sport.
No more.
Those days are gone, and as a collective, we're a very strong beast, and we've been too nice for too long, and I think we're very prominent.
Well done.
And John, I've got a question. Like going back to the Women's World Cup coming to Australia, I think obviously the Women's World Cup itself will do a lot and we'll get a lot of eyeballs onto it, but it's always about what's after that. How do we continue that progress with that World Cup, and what is it? Is there it's discussion between Football Australia and the state, like each individual state, in regards to how do we continue developing it at the lower levels after the Women's World Cup is gone?
Well, it's great that you mentioned that, Pokuah, because my work in Albury, we have a legacy team here that's built around the female football and the World Cup, and there's a range of projects with some great people involved here, together with the Office of Sport and Football Australia, and that's what we're talking about, acting collectively in the best interest of the game, in the best interest of football. Like in Albury on Tuesday, we announced a $150,000 grant on a $500,000 project, which allows for female-specific change rooms, female-friendly environments for people to be involved. There are a range of other projects across the state, not just in metropolitan regions, which are important to encourage females to be involved way past the World Cup, to be not only on the pitch, but in coaching roles, in administrative roles, in future leadership programs. So there's a heavy investment there to ensure that we're not here for just 2023. You're involved. You'll be involved for a long period of time. How do you want to be involved? Come with us.
So it's a whole of football approach, as it should be, eh?
That's right.
Fantastic stuff. Can we just take you slightly left of field? You're the new CEO of Football New South Wales, one of the biggest federations in Australia, an enormous responsibility, and all of a sudden, Football Australia has sent out forms and asking various clubs across Australia if they want and if they wish to participate in a national second division. What role do the state federations play?
Look,
or can they play?
Yeah, look, do we know it's a conversation that's coming? Yes, we do. Are we involved in those conversations? No, we're not. We have our own competitions that we run, which invariably, would probably involve a number of our clubs, and we've got a very historic contingent here. And
you certainly do.
And newer clubs as well. So, that conversation now, we'll wait to see where it's at and where it leads to, and, the implications and the ramifications of any actions there too will certainly ripple down to us. But having said that, it surely needs to be explored. It's a model that works around the world. Whether it works appropriately here, it will be investigated, and there's been due diligence done where, we need to examine it. We are a big country. We are a large country. There are significant hurdles, but if we can overcome those, well, it's all for the good for the game. We're all supportive of that.
You mentioned hurdles. One of the biggest hurdles, of course, is the tyranny of distance. That's the one thing that the Europes and and Britain and other nations, the Italies and so on, don't have to contend with. They don't have to contend flying, 4 or 5 hours from one end of the country to the other. And you imagine also in the A-League, as we're watching, we've got teams like Perth Glory, of course, flying to New Zealand to play. So it's not only across the country or across the continent, it's across the ditch, which adds another layer of complexity and cost. Now, will we find out that the costs require us to be more inventive? In other words, more creative in the way we build a national second division? Will it be conference mode or something else?
Well, I think all elements need to be on the table, George, because we need to be transparent here and say these are very real costs.
Huge.
Significant. But we also need to say, well, what is in the best interest of football? How do we progress? How do we provide opportunities for our future younger players to come through? Is there a bigger talent pool that we can nurture? How do our federations play a role in this? How do our junior clubs and our grassroots clubs become part of the story? And how is there a pathway that we all progress and ensure that there's a path and a pipeline for all those players to go to, whether it's their federation representing their state, whether it is a second division, where coaching as well, administrative as well, and all those elements. It's not just about playing, and how do we make it a sustainable model that we're going to be proud of. And then, obviously, George, as you know, the conversation then needs to work out to be, is it going to be promotion relegation? Is there a rainbow at the end of the conversation for these people to be involved? And and you mentioned Perth Glory, if they get relegated, what happens there? Is there another Perth team that comes in, or is it the best team in another
in the country?
Those logistical elements that can't be ignored, and they'll be part of the bigger conversation.
Wow.
Well, John, I think that's a really good point. Like, the sustainable model part, I think, is the aspect that has probably held the national second division back from going, because it takes a lot to get everyone on the same page. What do you see as a system that works out for the state federations, but also ensuring that the national second division is sustainable? What do you think those key pillars must be?
Look, I don't want to preempt anything that the FA has in mind. So I don't. But the sustainability. Look, it's no good to be a functioning model for the first 2 years, and then we have to revisit the model.
Yeah.
It's hard to build tradition, history, passion if the model keeps changes.
Yeah.
And I'm old enough to know, and George, we were the same vintage of Collingwood Warriors and Carlton, and Carlton were a very successful team for the 2 years I were there. And the various iterations of Gippsland and changing the name and reinventing.
And it wasn't only that they were successful, they also introduced a crop of youngsters who carried the game for the next 20 years.
Absolutely.
Didn't they? That golden generation.
Some of those boys, Vinny or Bresh, those opportunities to play as well, right? So there's always, but we need to make sure that our game is full of traditions and we're able to build upon traditions, not knock them down and start again because it hasn't worked for a while. We need to make sure that it's a sustainable model, a model that works well, that we're able to have an aspirational element to that and provide, and we need, it's good, that we're able to provide opportunities and greater opportunities. but it needs to be real. It needs to be thought out pretty well. I'm pretty sure the powers of people do that.
Fantastic stuff. Let's get back to the state division for a moment, or the state leagues and Football New South Wales. Are you seeing greater numbers of young women wanting to participate in the NPL competitions?
Oh, absolutely, George. And you always review. You know, the fun part of that is every year you need to revisit what your model is, because the numbers are, you know, we're bursting at the seams here, and it's fantastic, you know. And our biggest challenge now is capacity, the opportunity to field a greater number of teams on a limited number of services. And that's where government conversations take place, and they need to come to the party, because, you know, like I said, female football is prominent. It's here to stay. It's a big player in sport, not let alone our sport. And it's exciting times, but the governments need to come to the table, and we need to make sure that we have a number of projects in line that satisfies the requirements, not only from the playing perspective, but also from medical, health, administrative and coaching. And as long as we got people that are involved in the female game, and if they don't want to play, they're involved in some capacity, then we're in a good space.
Absolutely, and I think that's really important. But for your the New South Wales, you guys have a really strong and healthy NPL competition with
and a history.
Yeah, because with a lot of the A-League women's players, when their season is finished, they head down and play for the likes of IPR and, you know, Sydney University, some great sides. How do you continue to build that competition whilst also you knowing that some of those players leave, and how do you create it to be sustainable, even more sustainable, and being I'm trying to figure out the way to put it, but ensuring that it's not just a stopgap and making it more long-lasting. I'm losing my words. But
No, I understand what you're saying.
I think John will understand. It's sustainability, which we talk about all the time. The greatest challenges.
Up until 2 or 3 years ago, the Premier League didn't even have a prominent women's competition, right? The likes of Manchester United and Liverpool did not have a women's team. We had women's competition far in advance that they did, right? Now that the opportunity, we're seeing the likes of Sam Kerr and Caitlin Ford work, at your club there, Pokuah, at Arsenal and Chelsea, right? There's a greater opportunity and aspirational element there. So, to that end, why we may lose players, that provides a greater opportunity for other players to step up, and the aspiration element becomes a more realistic and crystallised element at a quicker pace, which maintains that interest for everyone to be involved. I think it's an opportunity. I think it's fantastic. I think it's a beneficial element. I don't see it as a loss of players. I reckon it's a benefit that benefits a greater number of people.
It actually fans the excitement and the next generation, doesn't it?
Absolutely,
it actually turbocharges. If I've got an 8-year-old daughter or a 9-year-old daughter, and they see they're watching the women's Super League in Britain, they would get thrilled to bits.
I totally agree, but I think that my concern sometimes with Australian, in terms of the women's football aspect, we have a gap. Like, we've got the A-League, we've got the NPL, we've got the A-League teams, and the players interchange between, and I think the national second division brings up an interesting aspect of where women's football needs to go in that conversation, because it's not as easy to replicate, because we have so many players who play for both either or at different stages of the season. And obviously I think the first step is making the A-League women's fully professional, and then we can ensure that those players playing in the NPL are also getting the games. The games and the times they need, so we can develop that talent, and they go in there and
just humour me for a moment, John. How many games in the NPL women's? How many games do they play in a season?
Oh, it's a full season. It depends on the division you're in, right? So the number of clubs in the competition. But to alleviate the concerns that Pokuah has there, I think that what you will find now is the W League, George, and you will recall this, used to be only 8 teams and run by member in the early days, right?
Yep.
Now we've moved to 12 teams, which was last year was a 14-game competition. Now it's gone to 22.
Correct.
Right.
Yep.
Which means that with the seasons being longer, you will find that it'll be a more professional competition, which probably will preclude players coming down to the NPL, which they'll maintain their professionalism at an upper tier, upper level, and the other players will come through to the NPL.
So we'll see another generation that may have been delayed getting the opportunity, which is fantastic. Speaking of state leagues, NPL and so on, we're on the cusp of yet another season. How is Football New South Wales looking? And what are the things that you're most excited about?
Well, George, there's a number of things here. I can't hide my excitement, and you probably hear it in my voice. Being an old football guy, working with these traditional clubs, certainly, he's warms me, energizes me. They're passionate ground. People. There's a groundswell of passion at these grounds, and I just love it, right? But there's also the lower divisions as well, and I've worked now in recent times with people from the local associations and local clubs, and you got people up and coming, and you've got the old people like me that are still involved or want to be involved. There's also old friends that used to play and still maintaining with a second, third generation, even fourth generation being involved. So that kind of stuff is really appealing to me. It shows me that people still want to be involved in the game, even though they don't play anymore or don't play it well like I don't. It's a community thing. It's a groundswell of passion for this game that elevates A-League, A-League Women's, NPL, but it's not just about that. That's not the start and end of the story. It's the ground swell of passion, the canteen, things that were there a long time ago, but they're still there, but in a different manner,
slightly different form. John, I was going to tell you, I've got a Facebook friend. His name is Ron Lord. If the name sounds familiar to you, it may well be because he was our goalkeeper at the 1956 Olympics for playing for Australia. He went on to play for some of the biggest, clubs in the country. Prague, when it was in its zenith, with Scheinflug and others there. Ron Lord, still 95 years old, loves the game, reveres the game, and does what he can to keep the memories alive for the next generations that are coming along. As long as we have people like that, and I know, I look at Pokuah and I watch the next generation of broadcasters that we have at FNR, and they're younger and younger and younger, and I can see the one thing that ties them, and you know what it is? Their passion.
That's right.
It's not diminished.
That's right.
And not it doesn't. It almost doesn't make sense that they should have that much passion for the game, but they do, and that fills me as the chair of the organisation with so much excitement, because I know that we're leaving the game in good hands, or we're allowing them to take the next layer of the game and take it to a good place. That's really exciting stuff.
Absolutely, George. I'm seeing some of the commentary, people who conduct our commentary for our competitions here. There are some talented young people in our sport that, like the NPL, like the A-League Women's, like the A-League, they just need to be given an opportunity. And there's a number of sectors in our sport, in our admin. There are some talented, passionate people that will come to the fore in a few years, and they'll be replacing me, and they'll be replacing you, and I wouldn't be prouder because they love the game. Now, you mentioned to me Ron Lord. Ron Lord was playing 14 years before I bought, but I know Ron Lord. I want our young generation to know about
and
the history
revere him,
to carry it with them and to hand it down as well. And we talk about traditions. I want that to continue, and if we can do that upon building the capacity of our game, then we've got a bigger story to tell.
Do you think that, I think that a lot of sports is about narrative and the marketing aspect of sport, because you can watch basketball, you can watch football, you can watch it anywhere, but you watch the best leagues in the world because they tell the best stories and they have the most intriguing people. Do you think that a part of getting football in this country to where it should be is about the ability to combine the past with the present and telling the story of the journey of football and how we've got here, and so we're able to actually move from here, but ensuring that we always
never forgetting
acknowledging the past and incorporating that into the marketing of the game.
Well, I agree, Pokuah. When I was at the Wanderers, we were a club of, just a couple of years old, and we went to. But what I wanted to do is, and I set up a catch up where unless we can respect the past, we won't be able to go to anywhere in the future. And we brought people to the Western Sydney Wanderers games for a number of years from the past and celebrated, not because they were involved in Western Sydney, not because they were involved in any other club, because they were football people. And as long as we maintain those conversations, not every story is documented, but certainly we can get them all together and convey those stories amongst us. The younger generation would certainly take those with them, and it becomes part of folklore. We're only as strong as the collective fabric on our sport, all right? If we ignore the past, then we don't have as much as we would have as the old and the young combined to take our sport into the future.
100%. 100%.
No, I agree. I think that the gap in this game in football in Australia is because for me, like I loved football, but I would say that I was a Euro snob as a child watching the football games, and I didn't know about like the NPL because my parents didn't know about the NPL like that, and I've started going to the NPL only recently, and I love the community aspect of it and seeing different types of these different groups support their team, and it's such a great atmosphere, and I think that that's something that we maybe lack in the upper levels of the professional football in this country is the community aspect and that feeling, because that's what football is. It brings people together from all different places, and it's you feel so close to me. We might be so different to somebody in the crowd, but that football team you represent, that shirt that you wear, it connects you in such a way that I think that's the bit that we lack in telling the story of football in this country.
Yeah, and look, the guy sitting next to you he should be credited because for many years he's done that, and he's done that better than most. And we just need more George Danikians to be able to tell that story and unlock those stories in his head and share them around with the younger generation who we're doomed to repeat the sins of the past, and we still don't understand what happened previously. And there are elements, they're learning elements, they're historic elements, they're build tradition elements. They're all very important things. But again, with the view to taking into the future and not living in the past.
I thank you very much for those words. But can I also say, as I touched on earlier, for me, watching the next generation coming through, and that's what FNR has done from the last half a dozen years, it's made a commitment to make sure that the next crop of young men and women take the game along and also give it new life, new energy, because they love it. They absolutely love it as deeply as we do. They just haven't been around as long. That's the only thing. But I yearn for the excitement and the stories they're going to tell. I know that, and I can tell you that when the Women's World Cup lights up Australia and our media, which will want to be a big part of it, it'll be quite something and quite something exciting. But let's get back to New South Wales, Football New South Wales. The NPL competition's almost upon us. Is that right?
Started last week.
We kicked off last weekend, George.
Last week. How was the first week? And can I ask, has the arrival of new technology given new lease of life to Football New South Wales?
Oh, unbelievable, George. I mean, at the end of the day, you're at home, you've got one game going, you've got another game about to kick off. I'm watching a traditional derby in Marconi and Sydney United kick off, and Wollongong Wolves and Arpia having a kick off on Friday night. And the mobility, the ability to transfer experiences as a football aficionado. You go, mate, this is unbelievable. I'm going home on Friday night. I can't get to the game, but I'll turn it on and I'll feel connected, right? And that's part of it. That's part of the passion. You don't miss anything. There's a highlights package. There's players that are outstanding, been in the A-League, will be going to the A-League, will be going on to other things, on show, on call, on TV. It's on your computer, on your phone. It's fantastic, George. And so it's a long way away from where we were at Pratton Park many years ago.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I was talking to someone only the other day, expressing to them the view that although the world doesn't appear to be following mainstream television as it once was, it's watching far more television than ever before, and it's doing it in a fashion that they never imagined, and that is on their device, on their phone, in their car, in a way that if I'd said this to you 20, 30 years ago, John, you would have said to me, George, I don't know what you're smoking. I don't know what you're drinking, but clearly you're delusional. Sorry.
I think I did say that to you anyway, George, didn't I?
You did, and we were talking about other things. But but you know what I'm talking about. The arrival of technology has broken some of those barriers that we didn't imagine would ever be able to be overcome. So is this the way maybe forward for a national second division, allowing the technology to give us access to the game in a way that we've never thought before, and allow us to go to a sponsor and say to them, now listen, this is a way to get your brand national? Look, does that appeal to you?
Yeah, it does.
Because you've been the CEO of the club, you understand how much the commercial dollar means to each and every layer of the club, and what it is on the shirt front and on the back.
Well, George, for a guy that struggles to still understand the concept of television, how a picture gets from one place to another, I leave that to people that are more Pokuah's age than mine. But what I will say is this. As we are talking today via Zoom on this medium, this will not be the case in 3 years' time. It'll be an exponentially more improved process to streamline games, and the accessibility of our favourite sport will be even more accessible to people in bite size, or, the modern generation likes the bite size as well, right, in terms of very small small packages. But having said that, it'll be a different landscape as well. It'll be more universal. Now you can watch a game anywhere in the world. You can watch a highlights package anywhere in the world on your mobile device. It'll be no different for here. And we will showcase how Australian talent will be at the forefront of the sporting landscape here in terms of football, but also we'll reach the top in terms of football, as we are in the women's game now in the EPL in Norway, in Germany, where we see a range of females that we wouldn't have imagined not 10 years ago, 5 years ago, right?
Correct. Your thought about mini matches. If I had said to Les and to Johnny Warren, listen, I can watch 64 games and I'll watch it in less than a day and a half, they'll go, not possible. Well, it is possible. And it's to do with the arrival of this exotic thing called digital, and then now HD. So we're watching on a small screen in super sharp detail a game that we needed to watch once upon a time on a 60-inch screen. Now you see it on your iPhone or your Samsung, whatever, and it's quite remarkable. It is quite remarkable.
No, it is.
I've got a question actually, John, because NPL TV was introduced last season. Last season.
Season before or last season?
Was it last season? I may be
No, it's been a couple of seasons. Yeah,
it's
just right.
It's
relatively new.
Yeah, it's the website's looking like. Was that a conversation where all the collective Football New South Wales, Victoria, just all get together? How did that come about, that concept to make it a really, because the website's quite nice and able to watch everything, and it's really easy, it's really streamlined process. How did that come about?
Yeah, look, I wasn't here in the chair at the time, but having said that, the federations, a lot of them are involved. Not everyone is involved in this particular platform, but I think that you always need to improve, and I think the incumbents at the time realised that and need to stay pace to be relevant. Not everyone is invested in the A-League. Not everyone is invested in Australian football. Not everyone's, but they're all invested in football, right? So if you pick what you'd like, there are people that just love the traditional clubs and want to remain with that. That's great. With the A-League, that's great. The W League clubs, fantastic, as long as we're involved in football. But to be involved in those particular sectors, you need to provide the opportunity for them to avail themselves of viewing that. And that's where this platform becomes a very important part.
Okay, 1 week down, the opening week, what was the highlight for you?
Apia coming back from 2-0 down in Wollongong was a good start on Friday night. The tasty derby there between Sydney United and Marconi was always very, very spicy. And there's a number of new teams in that the A-League teams are now in our competition. The Wanderers made their debut, as did the Mariners. Sydney FC are always competitive there, and then you got also the newer teams, Mount Druitt Town Rangers, and the traditional Blacktown City and Manly are always a very strong side. So look, there's any number of teams. Rockdale's there, and they're flying that flag very, very strongly, and they're a very good club as well. Olympic had a great win, defending league champions, and Blacktown are the grand final champions. So, look, you can take any number of the fixtures, and you'll be entertained, and a number of high-profile people involved, but also up-and-comers, and that's what we're proud about in this league.
Pokuah Frimpong may not believe this, but I can remember a time when Blacktown City in the old NSL featured a guy called Sir Bobby Charlton as a guest player.
Really?
And they had another guy called Kevin Keegan that did okay for himself. And they had big crowds, huge crowds, and they were marvellous ambassadors. Do you remember? Remember?
I ran and saw him once, and you might remember this, George. I ran Kevin Keegan on an old radio station, 2GB in the old days, and I rang him when he was on as a guest, and I asked him about the Man United, because I'm a Man United Pokuah supporter, so I take umbrage with your support.
This is why there's been conflict here.
Oh, constantly.
That's what it is.
We've got to talk about your T-shirt after this, but that's okay. And I've rung Kevin, and I said, we've got a 10-point lead here. What do you think? And he said, I reckon you'll blow it. And he shouted at me, his prediction looked true. 1985, George, 1985.
I know. Look, this game has been filled with some wonderful characters and some great stories. And there are people who are working really hard behind the scenes to bring, Greg Werner and others, Benita Mercedes with her Fair Play Publishing, to bring so many of these stories to light for the new generations that are coming up and will follow. And I know that there are writers' festivals being planned, and there are international guests, wanting to descend on Australia. And where the excitement is when you realise that Sydney Airport will be the hub, which means New South Wales football will be on show for all those guests. Does that excite you as well, the fact that there'll be so many more people down under during the height of the competition?
Look, George, and I referred to the number of sectors in our game. It shows how widespread, and we've got talents like Benita and et al. Involved in our game in a number of capacities, and they've got a historic link to the game that maintains that. I love that. And I don't know if it's come through, but the history element to combine with the currency leads to the future. And the future is going to be when they come to New South Wales, when they come to Melbourne, and they see our national team, they see how we run a competition. It's no different to when it was in the World Youth Cup in '93. These are very important seminal moments. And for the women's game here, we won't be prouder than showcasing our country, showcasing our female talent, and showcasing our football at all levels at that point in time.
Let me just, before we let you go, just reflect for a moment on an outstanding young midfielder who we got a chance to speak to early in the season. His name is Nieuwenhof.
Yeah.
Young talent, former Sydney boy, has gone to the Western Sydney Wanderers. He has been a revelation. Does that fill you with a great deal of, pleasure to see another crop of youngsters not only maintaining the standards of the past, but showing us that they've got something else as well?
Well, George, this is a prime example. You might recall a couple of years ago when we had COVID and the league was shut down.
Yep.
We were getting the players and the foreigners. There was some challenges there in terms of visas and opportunity was given to the young town. People go, these boys can play. Well, you need to give opportunity. Yes, they can play. Everyone needs an opportunity. I started somewhere because someone gave me an opportunity. No different to you, George, not different to you.
Correct.
This is for everyone. It applies to everyone. The day we forget that everyone was given an opportunity, we forget the value of what the predecessor has done for us.
Bravo.
It's no different now that the Nieuwenhof has been given an opportunity at Sydney. He was struggling Western Sydney, struggling at Sydney for whatever reason, given an opportunity there. But guess what? There's another player that goes into his spot at Sydney FC, and long may that continue for everyone.
No, it is the magic of the game, and it fulfills us each and every season. And Pokuah will tell you she gets a huge buzz when she sees a young 14, 15-year-old that she spied in the NPL suddenly appear in front of her, making a debut for one of the Liberty W League women's teams. She just sits there and goes, well, how am I going to fit her into my commentary? And rest assured, she does.
No, but it's good. But as John said, I think that we need to continue. We need to recognise where the game is in this country, and we need to continue to develop those young talents because the A-League isn't the be-all and end-all for. We want our best players to be able to go overseas and play for the biggest clubs in the world. And in order to do that, we need to ensure that at every stage it's the best and the highest quality of football for them to play out. So then when they go overseas, they're able to be successful and represent Australian football in that manner.
Our guest on FNR's State of Our Football Nation this week, John Tsatsimas, who's the new CEO of Football New South Wales. He's had a tremendously exciting career, especially in his time at Western Sydney Wanderers. You would have seen some extraordinary things in that time. Very, very quickly, the highlight of your football experiences thus far and the low light.
Well, there's a number of elements to that, George, and very quickly, the Wanderers starting off as a community club, we only had 3 months. We didn't have a training ground or anything. We operated out of my house for a long period of time. That's winning the league in the first year. And I've had this debate with Tony Popovich on a number of occasions. He says the Champions League, and I agree with that to an extent.
Yes.
But actually to start a competition, to actually compete within 3 months and actually win the league in that first 3 months with a group of, just a group of motley. We were a motley crew. We didn't have anything at the time. So to come together is a credit to that playing group, a credit to the coaching, credit to the people that assisted us in that regard, a credit to the community, to the fans that got behind us. The Champions League was also a phenomenal moment, a seminal moment in the history of not only. See, the thing is that transcended sport. That was a community that came together, that showcased itself to the world and put Western Sydney on the map, right? So, for too long it was a disenfranchised area, and, very proud of that. But you can go back. Newcastle for me was a very proud moment. We had the smallest budget in the league, and we won the grand final with Dutchy at the helm at the time, and with Con Constantine, and certainly it's the only regional club that's actually done that. So. Apart from, if you call Mariners when they beat the Wanderers in 2013, I think it was, and I'm trying to forget that. So, there's a great, but the other most exciting part about it, George, to be quite honest, is seeing a number of people, that we both know that started as young players and now become coaches and elderly administrators. Sure. Kids now play, and they are the ambassadors for our game in a number of ways. And that for me is probably the best story, the longevity of these people in the game and still being passionate. This game is ups and has its downs and chews you out and whatnot, but the passion drives us back, and these people still remain in the game, and they are the true believers, because our game is full of complexities, is full of challenges, is full of uphill battles, but we're all still involved, right?
And it still makes us stronger too, these battles. Is there a better save than Ante Kovic's save in the final in Asia? Has there ever been a better save?
I like to say my over 35 save for Parramatta City in 19. Kovic is unbelievable. What is an unbelievable keeper? What a talented keeper! What a save at the particular point in time.
He had no right to save that, Johnny. He had no right.
He didn't.
Can I tell you? I was in tears. I was so moved by the sheer brilliance of what he did that day. It was like he had made a statement: "You're not going to pass," and they didn't.
They talked about the Berlin Wall being set up, but I think Ante was a stronger proposition than that at any time. So,
hey, listen, have I told you the Berlin Wall has come down?
Yeah, mate.
Ante's still close shop.
He's still in the air, right? He's still in the air. So, what a performance, And even in the first league, he was outstanding. He had a fantastic season that particular year. and he's tete-a-tete with the striker Shamrani over there. Was certainly interesting over those two legs. So,
I'm reminded that we talk about history and about knowing. Can you just very quickly remind Pokuah, how much time were you given from the first phone call when you were appointed CEO to getting the team to air, to get the team on the pitch? How long did you have?
Well, at the time we were 3 months. 3 months. Gold Coast had just fallen over, George, and they needed a team to fill in the broadcast commitments. So we got to our first trial game and we
no
had
players, nothing, no contracts. 3 months to deliver.
I will say that because I was in and out of watching the A-League as a kid, and one of my favourite things about tuning into the A-League was seeing the crowds at the Western
Parramatta.
At those crowds there
going nuts.
Was awesome. It was like it was what when you think of what football is, like those moments, that community feel that we spoke about earlier. That's what I've loved about seeing the Wanderers and
the Wanderers establish themselves in a fabulous way, and John can tell you now that they started with nothing. So all of that was community, it was passion, and it was success. The three ingredients that you can't miss out on. Is that right?
Well, that's right. I mean, George, you'd know this. In the old days, we used to have the Olympics Marconis, and what the Wanderers was the precipice for was the ability for 187 nationalities in Western Sydney to come together as one, to dance, jump, and celebrate a place that for a long time was a disenfranchised region of Sydney.
Correct.
They look at it now. Back then, there were no freeways, hospitals. I've cracked my head when I was a kid in the region and I had to go to Camperdown Hospital an hour away.
Wow.
And so it's very personal to me. Certainly, there were no facilities, infrastructure there, and my old man had to find a hospital with his son bleeding in the back seat and go to the city with a Gregory's map. No internet. So
no navigating system. No navigating system.
Yeah. So they're very personal. Education. I had to go to Sydney University and I lived out west. There was no universities at the time, and so all those challenges are real. Less so now. Let's be quite clear. But the common thread, the common denominator remains. It's a hotbed of passion, of multiculturalism. It's representative of a place that's now progressed, of Australia at its broader scope. And we're very proud of it. And certainly we've all come together, and we're very proud to say that Western Sydney Wanderers has been a common thread to unite all parties.
No, I love that aspect. I think that when we are creating, when these teams, they don't just represent themselves. I think they should represent the areas in which they are stationed.
And, more and more. And
because that's an important way of attracting people to come there. If they know that club represents them, and they're more likely to stay the long term and not be fair weather fans, because they know that this team represents me, and they want to do the best to show the best to represent our area. And I think that that's an important thing that we also need to keep in mind, that as this competition this football grows in this country and gets the spotlight that it deserves, I think we should all.
As John will tell you, we've been blessed in this country in certain regions, the Hunter Valley, Newcastle, Wollongong, the Western Sydney. They've been huge nurseries of great talent, both young men and women, and watching some of the talent year after year come through. And that's probably the most rewarding thing for you now as the CEO of Football New South Wales. You can sit there now and watch that next generation, that next layer of talent, stick its hand up and, more importantly, put its best foot forward when it comes onto the pitch and showcases its talent. That must be enthralling on one level.
Oh, look, it's fantastic. Look, and then it goes. It shows, it highlights the next cycle is in action now. You mentioned Ewan Hop before. Before him there was a young Mark Bridge.
Oh, yeah.
Before him there was a young Jim Patikas. It's a cyclical thing, but it's a regeneration process, and regeneration only takes place if you provide opportunity and nurture and foster it, and provide platforms for these players, administrators and coaches and leaders to come through.
You mentioned Jimmy Patikas. I did the interview with Jimmy Patikas when he was playing at AIK for SBS in Greece. We were in Greece at the time, and Jimmy came and was terrific and gave us a couple of hours to do a story and a feature on him. The only thing I had to do was bring back a suitcase full of presents for his family. Now, in this day and age, I wouldn't be able to do that because it's not my bag, my suitcase. But we brought it back, and they were delighted, thrilled to bits to see all the memorabilia and all the treasures that came with it. It was just fantastic. And Jimmy Pokuah, had he scored that goal against Scotland, John, that hit the one that hit the bar,
unbelievable.
It would have been a different night. It would have been a different night, wouldn't it?
He's pulled his hair back, knowing he's that close, and Arrock is on the bench there. And see, these are the great moments. And I would encourage you all to look, particularly Pokuah's generation, to look back at the historic moments like that and take them with them and build their own moments with that alongside. And we become a heavier article. We become a lorry. We become a minibus. We become a truck with our memories and our history together. If we just ignore the past and ignore the good parts of the past, then we just become a very thin layer moving into the next generation, and that'll continue to be the case unless we bring everyone along, good, new, old, bad.
Beautiful stuff. John Tsatsimas, our special guest on State of Our Football Nation on FNR. Johnny, thank you very much. Continued success. We hope week number 2 of the MPL competitions is as exciting as the opening week of the competition was. And let's see how many upsets, let's see how many great derbies we get to enjoy between now and the end of the season. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Pokuah. Thank you, George. Thank you for having me. All the best.
Yes, Studio. All the best.
Bye.
John Tsatsimas, fantastic, giving us a sense of what's important and what we need to make sure we hold on to. And you need to go out and see some more archival footage.
I do.
You do. John's spot on. Go and see that game. Go and see how close Jimmy Pokuah's got to giving Australia a win. And had we got that win, well, Olympic Park they probably would have burnt it down with the excitement.
They might have.
Yeah. So there you go. Just an opportunity to see, Football New South Wales in good hands. Some things that they have done and some of the things they've incorporated a bit different, allowing us to showcase the game with new technology.
Absolutely.
And that may well be how the National Second Division starts to take some shape.
I'm interested to see how the National Second Division turns out and what the plan is.
I want to see the names. I want to see which clubs put their hand up. I reckon Preston will put their hand up.
I hope.
You reckon Preston?
I absolutely reckon Preston will, and I hope they do, because I think Preston have done a lot of work recently.
I'm thinking Josh Parrish for president.
No, I think that Dave's got that.
Dave's sorted.
Dave's doing a fantastic job there. But Preston, a club like Preston have done a lot of work to rebuild that club to where 100%. They are now. It's fantastic to see. And, you want to see the likes of South Melbourne and things like that go into National Second Division. Clubs with a lot of history, but also clubs that are sustainable and have a long-term vision for themselves. I wanted to see.
Look, the Football Australia wants a chance to assess the level of interest. They also want to refine the strategy, which we were touching on earlier, the vision, how the competition will look, how it might operate. And, of course, like everything else, as John alluded to, it's not just the teams, it's the administration that you will build to run the game and run the competition. So a new national tier of football between the A-League men's and the NPLs.
Absolutely, and I think George, we should try and speak to some of the clubs that do put their names up.
Well, let's keep monitoring the names that come through the door. And James Johnson, of course, the CEO of Football Australia, has made it official. So there you go. No more talk. It's about making it happen.
Absolutely. And I think it's the only way the football in this country will be able to grow and get to the stage that it needs to be.
Good luck. Which games are you calling this week on Paramount Plus?
I'm doing Canberra taking on Sydney FC. So it'll be an interesting and fun game.
And where is that game going to be played?
At McKellar Park.
McKellar Park.
Yeah.
All right. Great stuff. Good calling.
Appreciate
Until next week.
Till next week.